There are 4 phases to painting that we're going to go by. Phase 1 is underpainting. Okay? Phase 2 is going to be blocking. Phase 3 is going to be blending. And then phase 4 is details and finishing. Okay? So that's kind of how we'll set like timelines via painting. It'll be like, for this many days, you should be underpainting for phase 1. For this many days, you should be phase 2 blocking. So on and so forth. So any time that I do a demo with you guys, this is how we're gonna do it, okay? So first thing that I want you to do with you've got yellow ochre and raw umber, so you have a dark yellow and a brown. I want you to go ahead and take some of this gloss medium and add it to these paints to kind of thin it down. Use your use your palette knife. So use these to kind of thin it down and make it a bit more workable. Okay, you can using a fairly good amount. It doesn't change the color, even though it seems like it would, because it's not white, it's just looks that way. And I want you guys to get used to using that gloss medium to make your paints more fluid and easier to paint with. Can you go get what? That's fine. I hate you. You got everything frisketed out? Okay. Hey Emma, if you've got a project for Duncan too that you can work on in the meeting, you can do that too. Like that's what Paige is doing, and then I can hit you guys tomorrow. Abby, same thing. Once you're done with your painting back there, if you've got something for Duncan you can work on, then you can do that, and I'll hit you guys tomorrow. Okay, so I've got both of those, and I got a lot of paint. I don't know if I'm gonna even be using all of this. Okay. All right, so I've got that mixed up. Now I want to focus on my background first. So anytime in painting, do your background first and then do the things on top. It makes it much easier to paint that way, so you don't have to be as careful. Generally, if you have a large amount of empty space, you're gonna use a larger brush. So you have to kind of gauge on your space via your brush size. So if it's really large, use a bigger brush so it doesn't take near as long to paint. If you are working in a small area, then pick a small brush, okay? So be selective about that. So since I'm gonna be working kind of in the background, I don't have huge amount of spaces. So I'm gonna use a larger kind of, well, medium-ish brush. So one like this size for some of it. And then I'm gonna also use a smaller, I like the angles a lot. And then I might use my round brush also. So I might use 3 different paintbrushes to start off with here. Okay. All right, the other thing about capturing space and distance and so on and so forth, here in underpainting, we're just kind of setting the tone, but we can start that here at the very beginning. Things in the background are actually going to be lighter and less detailed than things in the front. You wouldn't think that they would be lighter. Most of the time, you'd think that they would be darker because if it's going off in the distance, kind of like tunnels. But so it's a little opposite. Like if you were to kind of paint like a mountain range, your mountains up front are going to be really dark, and then your mountains in the back are light and they get like less detailed. Anyway, that's an example, okay? So what we're going to start with is we're just going to start with kind of our lights in the background, okay? Kind of just giving generalized. Then we can go in and make middle tones, and then we can work like shadows in, and then so that's where the brown's gonna come in. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scoop up some of this yellow ochre, and I'm gonna relocate it to another spot on my paint palette, and then I want to water it down a little bit. For underpainting, you want these paints to just kind of be more of like a wash instead of a solid paint color. So I'm gonna grab some water, and I just want to water it down just a little bit. Okay, so it's more of like a wash instead of like a real thick paint. Now I'm going to move my paint palette out of the camera because you guys don't really need to see it until I mix something, and then I'm going to go ahead and start working. Okay, so in my image, all of my negative space, like I talked about, let me get my strawberries and my pretzels here. Okay, so the negative space that I'm going to be working on is the table. So I've got here the paper towel, and then I've got my mug. So technically I kind of have 3 different values just in there. This table part is really light back here. My paper towel is kind of a medium, and then my mug is dark. Okay, so kind of figure out background wise where's your lightest, and we're gonna start there. Okay, so obviously yours is gonna be looking a little bit different than mine, and so mine's also a small area. So my lightest part is gonna be back here. And like I said, it should just be pretty washy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my larger brush just to block out that larger area. And then I'm gonna use a smaller brush to get in around my details. Okay, so I've used my larger brush to get pretty close to everything. I'm gonna go ahead and wash that out. And then I'm gonna move to a smaller brush. I'm gonna pick my angle brush too. So now I'm gonna grab a small one to go in and around my details. Also go on the, you don't have very much side on your little canvas panel here, but go ahead and paint on the sides too. So if you ever get like a full size canvas, that you're painting on the sides as well. Okay, here you don't really have to worry about it being very clean brush strokes. You're just setting a tone for your values, okay? All right, so I'm kind of using this brush to just go in and around all of my shapes. Nothing are forms yet because nothing looks three-dimensional. Okay, so there. Got my first part of my background done. Now I'm gonna pull my image and I'm gonna look at where else am I gonna have some lighter areas. Well, my paper towel, it's technically lighter, but it's darker than here. Now I can see this is still paper towel in here, in between my strawberry and pretzel. So really, that's my only spot where I have something really light. So now I'm gonna move on to my medium tone, and that's pretty much all of it. So all of my paper towel, okay? So all I'm gonna do, I'm gonna bring my paint palette back here. I still have this watered down yellow ochre, and I'm gonna keep that there. And now I'm gonna pick up some of this burnt umber, the brown, and I'm gonna mix a little bit of it in with this watered down. And hopefully I didn't do too much. We'll kind of see. Okay, so you should be getting kind of like a creamy brown color. The reason it's creamy like that, almost that it looks kind of like a tint, that yellow ochre inherently has some white in it. So you've got to start thinking about that when you're going to mix colors also, is that does it inherently have white in it? Does it have black in it? Like the color, we have tubes of magenta, which is like kind of a pinky color. It inherently has white in it, and so that's going to tint things out, okay? All right, so now I've got like my medium tone, and I don't have any spaces that are like too huge for me to work in, so I'm just gonna stay with a smaller brush. And like I said, I'm just gonna target all of my like paper towel areas. And so that's pretty much all of what I got going on, and I'm gonna save my darkest for that mug in the background. And we'll see how far I can get. I should be able to get all of my background in today. Okay, so make sure you have your image in front of you so that you realize where you should be painting and where you shouldn't. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just start painting that in here. Now this looks really dark on the screen. It's not near as dark as it looks. I just have kind of some bad lighting. And again, this should be kind of watered down. You're just kind of setting a tone here. Don't forget to paint on the edges. And then this part's going to take me a little while because I've got to get in all the negative spaces in between my pretzels. And try to stay as true to my shapes that I drew out as possible. This is where you can kind of practice. We haven't talked about like brush strokes and really using our paintbrushes in different ways. If you use a lot of pressure and you push down quite a bit on your paintbrush, you guys can see that it spreads the bristles out, and it's going to make wider paint strokes. If you use little pressure, you're going to get daintier lines, thinner lines. Okay. You can also use your paintbrush on either side. That's the cool thing. Sometimes if I want some stability when I'm painting, I will put my pinky finger down on the dry parts of my canvas and just kind of give my hand some stability. Abby, you got stuff for Duncan you could do? Yeah. It's out in your car. Well, why don't you bite the bullet, because you're going to need it later anyway, right? Okay, why don't you go sign out the office, go grab it and bring it in. All right, guys, so just kind of going through. Don't worry about like any shadows or anything like you see right now. Just make everything all the same. Same color, I guess, right now. Okay, so I'm being pretty careful. You don't really have to be, because you're going to be painting over this stuff anyway, but I wanted to try and stay true to my drawing as much as possible so that it wasn't going to confuse me later. Okay, so again, you don't really need to worry about, I really shouldn't be painting this on top of my watercolor paper. Yeah, and that's why, because I just got acrylic paint on my watercolor painting. Ah! So that's cool. Mixed media for Miss Anderson. Seriously? You gotta be kidding me.
Make your computer easier to use.
What? Okay, hold on, guys. I've got to restart my computer. So just keep working through your value. I'm going to keep painting also, even though you can't see what I'm doing. And we're almost to cleanup time anyway, so. Okay, so how tomorrow is gonna work, my acrylic people, you come in and kind of finish your middle tone that you have going on right now. I'll have mine completed, and I'll get my dark tone in there, which that's gonna be my mug. So that'll be kind of pretty much straight, there we go. Straight brown. I might add it to this a little bit just to kind of keep the same consistency with the mixing it with the yellow ochre. And then I want to start on my details, so my foods, and I need to kind of start figuring out their values and then placing them in. So all the underpainting needs to get finished first. And then you work through blocking out color, mixing and figuring out there, okay? All right, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, you guys only have about 4 minutes to get cleaned up, so why don't you go ahead and do that. Tate, did you get everything frisketed out? Okay, so you're like ready to paint. Okay, so your color wheel, go ahead and put that over here on my paper cutter. I need to print those. And then Paige, will you turn the overhead light on for me? Okay, so you guys go ahead and get cleaned up, and then we'll continue this tomorrow.